Thanks for joining me on my channel, and I wanted to welcome you. And we're going to be making the sloth today from start to finish. We'll unpackage him and see what's in the package, and then we'll go from very start to finish and show you how to make him and little hints to help making him. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below. Also, I have a link to my website, ruthtillmandesigns.com. You can not only get my kits, but you can get my fluff, which I have a premium fluff for you, just packaged just enough to fill a stuffy, and my hoops that I recommend using. These are great hoops. They're a little better than wooden hoops because they stay together a little better. There's a little lip that holds them. So go to my website to find those. So let's get started and open up Sloth. The Sloth is so cute. He has a picture on the front of his package. And so let's open him up. Try to pull him out here. And here he is in a drawing form. I hand draw these and have them printed on organic cotton. So here's his lines, and those are the lines that you're going to be stitching. And on the other side, it talks about the threads that are included and where the threads should go and what type of stitches for those colors should be. And also has a little guide on ideas or how to attack it. So there is a stitch guide, and those stitches have different, this guide has different stitches that I recommend for using my kits, all the way from the basic running stitch, which anybody can do. And you can do a running stitch on the whole entire kit and it'll look great, through all the way through fill stitches and even more advanced stitches like the French knot. So that's a great little guide to have on hand. And here he is. Let's open him up. He's printed on organic cotton through spoonflower.com. And he is such a cutie. He was actually requested by a couple of students, so I finally decided to make him. And he has holding a stick, it's hanging on to a stick there, and with a little S he carved in with his nails for Sloth. Some people think it's for their first name, like Samantha or Sarah, but no, it's for Sloth. And they come with a needle, nice sharp needle with a big eye in it. And then they come with the matching threads, just enough thread to finish him. And there's a little pack of threads. And then the background. The background is just usually basic backgrounds that match them so that when they're made up, they look really cute. So let's make him together and see how he's made from start to finish. And then I'll show you what he looks like when he's finished.
Here he is. We're going to thread our needle first, and the thread comes in DMC 6 count floss, which means there's 6 little threads in a piece of thread. So we're going to initially start with all 6. If you're going to start with all 6 on a needle, you're going to want to knot just the end and have a tail that you pull and only use one part of the thread. Do not double the thread. Another way is to double the thread, and that is to split it into 3 and 3 and 2 threes. So we're going to split it from the middle going out. It's easiest doing it from the middle going out. You have to let it split by letting it unwind itself as you're splitting it. So just slowly let it unwind in your finger and it will split open, and then you'll get 2 pieces of thread to be able to double your thread, and then your needle is secured on because you're putting the needle in between the double pieces of thread. So let's finish splitting, and we're going to put it on the needle. See, we have 2 pieces of thread. I'm going to put one aside, and we're going to put it on the needle, and I will show you how to knot it. So when we put it on the needle, then you're going to want to match up the 2 ends so that they are in line with each other, and that's where we're going to put our knot. And then you're going to want to put the needle at the middle part on the other end. To make a quilter's knot, we're going to create a circle and point the needle and the end of the thread together at each other. We're going to grab the end with the needle hand and wind the thread around the needle. We're going to grab that wind, we're going to push it up and hold that wind all the way down to the other end, and what you have is a great little knot ready for you to sew with. So let's get our sloth in the hoop. The hoop comes in two pieces. One's with the screw hardware, that's the top piece. The bottom piece is this ring, and it has a little bit of a lip, and we're going to put the lip down on the table so that it doesn't get in the way while we're putting the hoop together. We're going to put him on top of that ring, and we'll start with the head. So we'll put his body down and the head over the hoop part. We're going to take the ring with the hardware, and we're going to loosen the screw just a little bit to help put it on. We'll pop that on and then tighten the screw so that we can start making a nice tight surface for us to stitch on. So pop him on, tighten the screw, and as we're tightening, I'm going to pull the fabric taut like a drum so that you have a nice taut surface to stitch on that will allow the stitches to stay nice and flat. So here is tightening the screw, and then you want it to feel like a drum. You can always be pulling your fabric as you're stitching. So we're going to start with the head and the body. We're going to use the dark gray, and we're going to do the V's and the outline. The V's are very easy. You just do an up and down stitch from one line to the corner and the corner back to the line, and you just do this over and over in clusters all over the furry V parts. I've come to a point where my thread is getting short and I need to finish up this sewing area so that I can cut the thread. You want it to be about a finger's length or more to be able to cut it, or you're not going to be able to tie it properly. So we're going to put it to the back of your work, and then you're going to cut off the needle, and you're going to separate the piece into two pieces so that you can tie it into a double knot. The secret to separating is to separate it from the bottom or the fabric side going up so that it twists apart. Don't separate it from the top. So we're going to separate it open here, and then I'm going to take those two pieces and simply tie them into a double knot. And when I'm done tying them, you want to cut it a little bit shorter so that the long pieces don't get in the way of your other sewing. Now we're going to start our other stitch, which is a split stitch, and it's going to be the stitch that we're going to use for a lot of the borders and the edges of our sloth. And to do that, we're going to take a stitch, and then we're going to take a stitch past that stitch and then go back in the middle or split it open. It's called a split stitch. So again, we take a stitch past, a little bit past the last stitch. We're going to go back the other way down into the middle of the last stitch we made and split it open and push that down. And that is your split stitch. We're here at a point on the top of the sloth's head, and I'm going to finish my split stitch to that point, and then I'm going to just start a new section over from that point down, and that will give you a nice sharp point on his little fuzzy head there, and it will create a sharp point instead of a soft point. And that's how you transition from point or section to section with your split stitch. We want to use that dark gray to go around the mouth. I went over the lines for the mouth, the little smile line. It's okay, we're going to use that black and go back over it later. This piece of thread that I've been using is long, and I can use the rest of the thread, so I'm going to just cut it at a finger length instead of cutting it at the needle. I'm going to split it open like I did before and tie a double knot and clip just like I did before. That way you can retie that excess thread and you can keep using it. We're going to use the dark gray on the body as well, and we're going to use the split stitch all around the outline markings of his hands and his body, wherever there is a dark gray line. Now I'm going to switch to the silver gray or the light gray, and we're going to do the little fur lines, which are just up and down lines, and the split stitch around the eyes and the belly. And this adds that texture and that change of color that's so exciting and fun. So just the same stitches, and just keep working all around the belly as well. Now we're going to go to the stick he's holding, and we're going to use the brown floss, and we're going to do what's called a back stitch, which is similar to the slip stitch. You're going to take your stitch, you're going to take one small stitch initially, and then you're going to take another stitch past that stitch, just like we did with the split stitch. But this time, instead of going back down in the middle and splitting the stitch open, we're going to go back down to the end of the last stitch. And this creates more of a just straight, non-textural line. It's just a very simple line. And it's great for stitching things like wood or hard type pieces, or things that to show the hardness of it instead of softness. The way I tackled the knot in the wood and the heart with the S in it is I just did that all the way around before I transitioned up to it. So I just went around and around until I was done with that little area, and then I transitioned up another line to get up there. And you want to do the little pieces or the little lines in between the claws there to add dimension. So let's add his smile. Let's get some black thread, and we're just going to do the smile, and then I'll show you how to do a fill stitch on the eyes. We're going to do the same stitch as we did for the stick, and we're going to do a back stitch for the smile. To do the eyes, we're going to do a fill stitch. You want to start in the middle of a shape. It's hard to draw a straight line on the edge of a shape like a circle or a curved shape. So you're going to start up in the middle on the top, go straight down to the bottom of the shape, and then you're just going to keep doing this back and forth next to the last stitch you did. So I'm going to come up right next to the last stitch and go right next to it, and you're going to do that over and over again until it fills one side of your shape, and then you'll skip back over underneath to the other side and fill the rest in so that your shape is fully covered with thread. For the face, I used a cream colored floss, and we did the little tiny V's just like we did on the body and the head, and then we're going to do the outline stitch the same way with the split stitch there, and just go all the way around doing that. And then we're going to transition down to the claws, and those are going to be done with a split stitch as well, and that will give a lot of texture to those claws. So we're just going to carefully do some small split stitches along the claws and get those points nice and sharp, because sloths have those sharp, long claws. Here he is all done and sewn up. He's so textural and fun. We're going to put him together now, and we're going to turn him over and mark him. We use a 5/8 inch, a little more than a 1/2 inch of a marking, and I'm going to just use a light pencil mark to show where I need to stitch, just to keep my guide. And I'm going to do soft lines all the way around, so wherever there's a point in him, I'm going to do a soft curve. Wherever the hair is, I'm going to curve around that softly and not put the little hair marks. And then once you have that done, we're going to find the spot where we're going to open him up, or have him open and turned. So we're going to mark about a 2-inch space where there's going to be an opening, and we'll sew in between those two. Now we're going to put the background fabric face up, and then we're going to take our Stuffy, and we're going to put him right side face down. So right sides together, and you'll see the wrong side as you're stitching them closed. And then we're going to want to pin him together a little bit. I use like 4 to 6 pins just to keep him in place while you're stitching him, because you're going to handle him and it's easy to move him around while you're stitching. So let's get those pins in. We're going to get some thread. It can be a white, gray, brown thread. We're going to start at our 1 mark, and I'm going to take a double stitch there just to secure that stitch really well. And we're going to start going up and down, and that's called a running stitch. I'm going to take nice small stitches up and down very close together. That way our stuffing won't come out after we're done stitching, making all this stitching and work. We don't want our stuffing to come out, so we want them nice and small. Another way of running stitch is a gathered running stitch, and so you just gather some fabric, very small stitches on, up and down your needle, and then you push it out. The key to doing a gathered running stitch is not to let your thread pull it and gather the finished product. So you want to flatten that out, because if you don't flatten it out and it's gathered, you're going to have all these like wrinkly areas on your stuffy. So just flatten that out. So do a running stitch all the way around to the other mark on the other side. And we're going to take a little knot here. That knot is pretty easy to do. You just take a couple little stitches. The last stitch you do before you finish pulling it through, you're going to want to put your needle through the loop of the thread that's there, and that creates a knot, and then you can cut that off, and that will secure it nicely. So make a loop and stick it through so that it's secure and tight. Now we need to cut him. I cut him about 1/4 inch from my stitching, and you don't want to get too much closer because he will definitely come apart if you get too close to your stitching. After we're done cutting all the way around him, we want to do some clipping. He's a curved shape, so clipping those curves helps lay him flatter, and his edges won't kink up after you turn him. We're going to turn him out, and I'm going to use a chopstick to help push all the edges out and turn him so before I stuff, because I want those edges to be as pushed out as possible. And I can also use that chopstick to help stuff him. And you can take a few pieces of stuffing a little bit at a time, and you just start putting it in there. You want to push it up to the top part of him, or the furthest part from the hole where he's being stuffed, and that would be his head for this little guy. And he will take most of that stuffing that I provide. It's about 5 ounces of stuffing is what they take, and I'm just going to keep pushing it. And I use the chopstick to help push it in. You just kind of grab the stuffing with your chopstick. And here he is. He's so cute. Let's close the bottom up so that he doesn't come apart. To do that, I pin him, and then I start stitching with either a whip stitch or a ladder stitch. The whip stitch is just going from the front to the back of him on the folded area the front to the back over and over again, and you just go around and around. The other stitch is called a ladder stitch, and that is tucking your needle sideways in the fold just a little bit. So you tuck it in sideways on the front, and then you tuck it in sideways on the back, over and over again, back and forth. And when you do that, as you pull it closed, it hides the stitching inside, and you get a nice little tight closure. So do that all the way across, and then we're going to knot the end the same way as we knotted with the loop knot. And the key to ending it and knotting it is that we don't want to cut the knot or cut the thread at the knot and then have the knot come out and then have it open up. So what I do is I tuck in my needle just a little bit, tuck it into him and push him out, and then I cut my thread on the outside there, and that leaves a little bit of a thread inside to secure it. And let's look at him.
Here he is. He's so cute. He has that cute little smile, ready to look at you every day, and he's so fun to make. He was a pretty easy one. He has a lot of texture, which I love. And the claws are just amazing, and that piece of wood that he's holding on is so textural and fun. So I hope you have just as fun making him as I have designing and making him. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to watch more kits being made. Thanks.